All right, welcome to another drone cast. We have a super special guest for you guys today, Chris Mercer. And Mercer is that's how he goes by, and that's what we're going to address him because he's one of the nicest people I've ever met and a brilliant mind. He's an accomplished entrepreneur, measurement strategist, and the co-founder of Measure Holding Group LLC, which is the parent company to measureu.com, profitschool.com, and measuresummit.com. Now, while Mercer has built this incredible reputation as a leading expert in measurement marketing, his true love is helping small businesses eliminate inefficiencies and optimize their operations by implementing a strategic approach to productivity and management. He's incredibly gifted at it. And in short, Mercer helps you figure out what's working, what's not, and what to do next. So, Mercer, so glad to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Damon. Appreciate you having me, man.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'd love, we're primarily talking about drones and the opportunity and this AI in the sky. And,
Yep.
one of the things that we talk about is this is really kind of it really is that once in a lifetime opportunity, but we're kind of in the middle of it. So it doesn't feel like it. It just feels like life. And, there's always this big, I guess, challenge of, well, maybe I'll wait till things settle out, or maybe I'll wait till things get standardized, or, maybe I'll wait till I get more experience, or I go to business school, or. What would you kind of say to somebody that was thinking about, hey, I'd like to get a drone, or I want a drone, or I'd like to do something and make some money with it, but I really don't know where to start. And, what would you say to that?
It's a really good question. Like, obviously, being outside the drone business myself, I'll just sort of rephrase the question into, when you're thinking about getting started in business, how do you know? Like, how do you get yourself to go to that next level and to take that first step? And fortunately, I've done that a bunch of different times. Like, just sort of my origin story as an entrepreneur. I've had some businesses that I started in my 20s, and I was kind of just sort of born out of the womb as an entrepreneur in a lot of ways, which I think is true for a lot of people. So if that's how you are, I think that's awesome. I was like that and got kicked in the teeth a bunch in my 20s, not learning how to actually run a business. And so I ran back into corporate America and got a job for 20 years, and sort of played it like that for a long, long time until I got back into it. And the reason I got back into it was probably a lot of the reasons the same people are looking at drones right now, which is you've got this job, you've maybe just exited a job for whatever reason, and you're looking at something that you want to be able to do that's on your own, that's under your own control, that's something that you enjoy, that's something that can also make a little bit of profit, pay the bills, and then some, give you some savings and some vacation money. And I think that's an important thing. That's exactly why I got back into being an entrepreneur from the corporate world, because I was getting frustrated with other people being in charge of stuff. It's exactly what it was. I don't want to paint it. I just like being in control of things and determining my own life. And I wasn't able to do that when it was always somebody else's job to come up with the plan and me looking at it going, it's not going to work. And yet not being able to figure that out, and help change that. So my thinking was, I'm going to start on my own and figure it out and, take the hits, but also get the wins from that. So the way that I started, and I think the way that anybody could start out, is you just start out by testing the market. You test, you can talk to a few different friends. You can try some stuff out on the different forums for free. You can ask around to get those early signals like, hey, is this something you really want to do? If something that, in terms of a market being there. And I think fortunately with SkyEye, there's a lot of that already done, probably the legwork of that, because you've done so much in the market, kind of what's there. If anything proves there's a market for drones, the recent kerfluffle that happened in New Jersey, where they couldn't say they had to say the word drone every 30 minutes because there were so many people talking about drones, like that shows there's something going on in this market, right? When it comes to drones. But regardless, it's that idea of, okay, yes, there's a market there. We figure that stuff out. Second thing is, how do I know that I can do it and make something of it? And I think a lot of that is just, it's a personal decision. And I mean that in like the purest, most brutal way of using that word of a decision. You decide you're going to do it or you decide you're not. I don't think it's something that people should try to do. Like, I'll try to figure out if I'm going to be good at this, is without the commitment of, I'm going to be good at it. I'm just going to be curious about how I learn how to do that. if that makes sense. It's a different way of thinking about it. One is I'm going to be good at it. I may not be good at it now, but I know I will be. And there's another one that says like, oh, I'm going to try to be good at it, but the second I reach failure, I'm going to leave anyway, because that might be some meta pattern you already have. If that's who you are, I wouldn't do it. I'd go back to something, corporate America or something like that. But for those that are wanting the extra benefit, to wanting the extra perks, I think that come with being an entrepreneur, mostly in terms of time that's ideally freed up, or money that's being freed up if things are working out well and the market's rewarding you for everything. There's nothing better. There's nothing better than being an entrepreneur. There's nothing better than being an entrepreneur. I can say that for living on both sides, and for a while living on both sides of the two different camps. I understand the tribes. There's nothing better than being an entrepreneur if you want the freedom, time, and money. Where it comes to it, is it a struggle? Yeah, but that's where you decide to make it happen. And then you just go, okay, I'm not stopping. I'm going to make it happen. Now I'm just going to open myself to learning how to make it happen and be willing to be wrong. That the things that I thought were going to make it happen aren't the right things. And I'm going to try something else out, based on either things that Sky is teaching or other places that they learned it on the internet.
Yeah, it reminds me of what's it, Star Wars or Return of the Jedi? One of the early Star Wars movie with Yoda when he's like,
Yoda.
yeah, there is no try. It's do or
Exactly.
not, right? And
Yep.
it's just it's that commitment. Yeah, and I mean, that was the whole catalyst for Sky Network and building it. It was my business bucket list, like everything I wish that I had when I started my drone business, way back, in '93. And trials, tribulations, the things that worked, the things that didn't work, and all those shortcuts to get in there and make things easier, knowing where to start and where to put your energy and not.
Yep.
So I've got one of the big challenges is I guess that people seem to have is the getting over that psychological barrier of trusting the tech.
Yeah.
Like one of the biggest challenges I hear is, how could I possibly charge $12,000 for 45 minutes of my time?
That's such a good one, because even in my industries, you hit that question where, and I'm going to rephrase it in a super generic way, but it's the exact same question, which is, how can this thing be, which is so easy for me to do and doesn't feel like a big deal, be worth so much money to somebody else? I and the only way that I like to think about it, when my brain does that, because it will also do that. And it's hard because you think logically, you're like, oh, I'm going to logic myself into believing it's okay. The first thing I do is go, for the same reason, that it's okay that some actor in Hollywood gets paid $50 million for the latest blockbuster. That's why it's okay. I
That's
don't need to logic my way to explain why. That the actor didn't. They don't care. They just get paid because that's how it works. And what happens is, it's kind of a weird question, because the way to answer the question is not to ask the question in a weird way. That's how you win that battle, is you just go like, hey, this is just how it works, and you move on. And you be done with it. Like that's honestly it. Because you look at every other place in the market that already does that and that you're okay with. Because I never thought about it. Told me, oh wait, I'm somehow okay with an actor being paid $50 million on a movie that made 30 million, right? Like some of these more recent movies that have flopped, they get paid a bunch of millions to do this and not do a particularly good job or provide a result. And yet they still get overly paid for that. That I'm better than that. So why can't I get paid a little extra? I'm just using the same mechanism. And that happens all the time. Think about CEOs, right? Same thing. CEOs get paid a ton of money versus the people who don't. And generically, the answer is because the value, they're higher up in the crux of where the value is created. If a CEO makes a bad decision, the company's bankrupt, right? If the janitor makes a bad decision, janitor gets replaced, right? It doesn't affect the company, is what I mean by that. Nothing against janitors or CEOs, just one's in charge of the ship of where it's steering and one is not, right? So the one that's in charge of it's going to get rewarded more. And that's where I think the value as an entrepreneur goes. You learn that it's because you're in charge. It's because you're the one delivering value. It's because you're the one that's making these other things possible for the other side of the marketplace, right? For our clients, where they could not get this done on their own otherwise. And for them, it's worth that for them, it's not a ton of money, right? For them, it's just the budget. It's just like, cool, this takes care of a problem for me that I never have to think about again, because now I've got somebody that can take aerial shots, as an example, for drones, right? It's like, I need somebody to be able to inspect the pipeline and not have a human walk down the pipeline looking at all the time. Let them be able to use a drone. It's faster, it's cheaper. They're the ones that need to justify the expense, not you as to how much you charge. And being open, and this was a huge lesson for me, so I'm glad you asked about it. It's being open to the fact that the value of what you think things are worth and what the market thinks your things are worth, you absolutely need to pay attention to what the market says, not what you believe. Because you will always cheap sell it if you think about what you think it's worth, because you know everything that went into it and you don't have the value for it because you paid for it with blood, sweat, and tears, right? Obviously money too, and a lot of times with trainings and things like that, but you understand the machinery. So you just don't value it as much because you really understand it. To everybody else, though, it's magic. And they will pay tens of thousands of dollars for the right magic spell that solves their problem. And you just happen to be the wizard or, sorceress, if you want to go that route, that handles it. That's how I think about it. I try just the second I start going it, I'm like, other people do it, so why can't I? And I try to see if that sort of takes care of it. Where I'm like, yeah, it doesn't matter. It's just how things work. Second thing is, well, because I'm the one in charge of the value and I'm delivering a lot more value for them than even they're giving to me, right? In a lot of cases, that's what I like to do. So even if they're paying me $10,000, I'm delivering them 50, 60, 80, $100,000 worth of value, So for me, it's still an overwhelming amount of value. Either way you handle it, I think it answers that question, or at least different ways to address it.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant advice. It's a great way to think about it too, because, and you're right, at the end of the day, you're replacing a service or you're introducing a new service that is giving your client 5, 10, 20x the return on what they're paying you. And regardless if it takes you 45 minutes or 45 days, they just care about the result at the
That's
end of the
exactly
day.
right.
And the
Yep.
technology, this AI in the sky we have now, it accelerates that whole process so much faster, which
Yeah.
is really cool.
Yeah, you sell the value, but you don't sell the how you're doing the value. And we get caught up in that as entrepreneurs because we know how we do it. So we think we're selling the ingredients. You're not selling the recipe. You're selling the cake. You're selling the finished product. That's what they're buying. And that's the value that's developed from the recipe.
Right.
That's how another way to think about it. But I love that example. It's a good one.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, and the other thing, a lot of these drone operators, they get so excited about the tech. I've got this 4K drone, it shoots 120 frames a second. They get all into that, and that's all over their marketing stuff. And
Right.
the clients don't care. They care about the result.
That's
You know,
exactly right.
they don't
Will
really.
I be able to zoom in and see things clearly still?
Right.
That's what matters in terms of what the Christmas is and all the pixels and everything else, right? It's can I do this thing? And that goes to features and benefits. And I think that's something that's an important lesson for an owner too. You learn the difference between, what the megapixels are in the camera feature versus, oh, you can zoom in and still read the license plates clearly benefit, if that was something that you needed to do or whatever the thing is that you're checking for.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's so the takeaway there is put your focus on the benefits, right? That's
That's where the value is. I mean, the closest thing I think that business ever gets to art, because somebody explained to me once that art was like the thing that happens between the person, like let's say it was a picture or whatever, painting. It's the thing that happens between the artist, right, who does the painting, but that's not art. Is the thing that happens when I see the painting. And at that point, that's not quite art, but it's when I'm experiencing the painting as the artist was experiencing the painting. That's the art, right? Try to connect those dots. And I know it's kind of like an esoteric way, especially when we're in the world of dollars and cents. Business wise, that's benefits. That's the art of business because they're hard to describe, right? What you think a benefit is may not be what the market thinks it is, which makes it a little bit like art, right? Subjective in a way. It is wildly subjective in a lot of ways. Things that you think are super valuable, the market will be like, yeah, it's not valuable at all. And opposite, they're going to think the wildly simple stuff for you is like the things that are super valuable for them. But the better that you get at focusing on the benefit, the true art of the business, the value you provide, the easier things are going to be for you to do, the better clients you're going to end up naturally having, the more money you're going to end up making.
Yeah, and I think getting even micro niche it down, because a lot of businesses serve different clientels, and like us in the drone space, we'll have different clientels. We might have a construction company, or a farmer, or a golf course, or a movie production company. They all the movie production company could care less about the nitrogen output on corn, and yield,
Right.
right? But for the farmer that has blueberries, he doesn't care about nitrogen output on corn. But for the farmer that's growing corn, that's important, right? And
Yep.
make sure that your messaging and the benefits that are targeting are specific to that end client, whatever it is. And I think what the riches are in the niches, right? So the more
Yeah. Yeah.
specificity there, the better it is, for getting that
Yeah.
across.
Yeah, I totally agree. And a lot of the reason too, I think because of that, I think the reason that works is always wonder like, why does that work so well? It's because you know who you're talking to, and to your point, you know if they care about, nitrogen coming off of corn, what the nitrogen levels off of corn are, or they don't, right? That's the idea. Because now you understand how to speak to them so you can communicate the benefits that they need to see, where a completely different person gets a different benefit, you know? Because you understand that niche and how they speak. And that's what I think it really comes down to is just understanding. That's all a niche really is. It's just a kind of a subgroup in the language that they use, so you can understand how to communicate with them. Keeping it on the easier side of things.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. Now, another challenge that I see a lot of people starting out with is making that kind of shift going from a B2C, they're a business selling to consumer, and then going B2B. So that's one of the other challenges that they have, like talking to companies about pricing and trying to figure out their pricing. One of the things that we teach is going in and finding out what their budget is, finding
Yeah,
out,
yeah,
because if you know what their budget is, then you can do a couple things. Number one, you can decide if let's say their budget is 15 grand. Well, you can build a proposal around a $15,000 project. But if their budget's $1,000, that's going to be a totally different proposal. And if you're not prepared and you
exactly.
don't know, and you come in with $1,000 proposal and they're expecting 15 grand, now all of a sudden you're not professional, you're not the person, they're not going to work with you, or vice versa. If you come in, if they want $1,000, they're thinking $1,000, that's their budget. You come in with a $15,000 proposal. Well, they're out of my league. I can't do it. It's not, and they just shut off and you lose that client.
Yeah, that's absolutely the case. We've had exactly that same scenario just in our business. If we're setting up like one of our brands is Measure You, we teach measurement. We also set up measurement for certain clients. But there'll be a client who might be a corporation, right, enterprise level, and they're coming in and they, like you said, they expect a $30,000 budget for this sort of thing. Somebody else, the exact same steps, right, exact same recipe we're going to use, they only have $1,000 budget. And if I pitch, to your point, if I pitch that $1,000 one to the $30,000 client, it's looked at as a bad signal. They look at them and go, well, obviously they are not good enough because they would know to pitch 30,000 or at least 20,000 or something. They would have been close to what our budget was. So I think when you're doing B2B, personally, I've sold both. I've got experience in managing both sales teams and doing it myself. I personally find B2B substantially easier because there's a lot less emotion. Like when you ask a human being what their personal budget is for something, there's a defensiveness. When you ask somebody what the corporate budget is, they're like, I don't know, it said I get this much. Like there's a less of an emotional connection to it because it's not their number in most cases, right? It's some number they were told. So I think B2B is a lot easier because they know those questions are coming, so they know to tell you the answers, you know. So from my perspective, I wouldn't be afraid of B2B as much as B2C. I think is a lot harder. B2B is substantially easier, longer sales cycle. It's going to take a little longer, but it's easier. And the only thing I would say is like one thing that worked really well when I was in B2B was the tchotchkes, like the swag pens and pencils and notepads and that sort of stuff, and just dropping them off, at the locations of the people. Just hey, just nothing to sell, just want to drop these off. Make sure you guys had it. If you need anything with drones, just let us know. Here's our phone numbers, obviously on there, right? And it's just for top of mind awareness. We used to do that in the recruiting business constantly. It's like how all the recruitment businesses do it. So you can be the pen they grab and go, oh yeah, I'm going to give them first shot, at getting the business. So that's a great tip for anybody who wants to use it. Works really well.
That's brilliant. And the one thing you mentioned there with B2B, which I agree, I think it is easier. It's not their money, and a lot of times they have to spend their budget because a lot of
They
these
do.
divisions, if they don't spend their budget, and this is one of the things that blows my mind as an entrepreneur. It's like they incentivize their people to pretty much be wasteful, right? Like if they have a
Kind of.
if they have a
Yes.
if they have a $500,000 budget in this division and they do a great job and they pull it across the finish line and they only spend 400 grand, what happens
Yep.
to the budget?
You would think somebody somewhere would have come up with hey, what if we just gave them a bonus based on how much of the budget they saved every year and how close they were to spending it or something like that to encourage that behavior. No one seems to have done that yet. But I 100% with you. And most of them, that's exactly what it is. Where on the end, they all have a budget. They need to spend the budget. They always are going to have the problem. They just want somebody on standby that they can call and they can rely upon that won't make them look like an idiot for using them as a vendor. So if that's somebody listening to a brand new business and you're starting out, I mean, think about how well when I think I'm building a house and I had a subcontractor, I can already stop telling the story and bet 80% of the people already went, here goes one of those nightmare stories about a subcontractor thing going wrong, right? My bet is it's a lot like that in the world with when different vendors that people just can't rely on. So if you can be the one that's out there that's branding your company, your drone company, like you can rely on us. We've got our systems. We're going to show up on time. Here's how we bring extra batteries or all this stuff that you should be doing, but other people don't do because they don't care enough. Especially somebody who's just starting out, you care so much more because you need to make a break because you need to maybe compete against a market that might already be there, or at least convince somebody that, hey, you're somebody worth relying on. And that energy is so like exciting to the B2B buyer because all they get all day long is just regular corporate, you know, I want to say drones, but I think that would be a pun in a bad way. The corporate, not drones in like a flying drone way, just, like the clones of each other. And I think it can be boring for them. So to have somebody who's like, hey, I'm getting started. Tell them it's a feature, not a bug that you're getting started. I'm just getting started. It's great that I'm getting started. Here's why. 'Cause I'm going to do everything I can to make you my premier client so that you are bringing in, the other people that that might need help with this, or at least can give me a case study so I can help get started. You can help me get started. I'm gonna do everything I can. You're gonna get the best possible price and the hardest possible work I'm ever gonna give you, the best quality, everything right now when I'm small. When you've been established for 15 years, those businesses forget about that. Not to say that they're bad businesses, they're not. They just tend to forget about how hard it was to get it initially because they've got momentum in the marketplace and they don't have to do that anymore. But in the beginning, you do. But the B2B buyer, they rarely see those individuals. So if you can get yourself in there, it becomes a kind of a fun conversation, and people they just want variety to their day, half the time. So if you can make it a fun story that they can help be a part of your success as much as you're a part of their success, why wouldn't they do business with you?
Yeah, that's so true. We talk about three wows. We always try and get three wows from every client, and in the drone space, just something simple like real estate, which is probably one of the things that people know the most about, taking pictures for houses. The first wow is when they actually get the pictures back and they're like, wow, these look great. These are, an aerial.
That's cool.
Most people are used to seeing aerial shots in movies, like high production, and they're like, wow, that looks great. So they get their first wow there. The other one, to your point, is just taking that little extra personal time and connecting with the client's client, in this case, the seller of the home, and talking to them. Spend 5 minutes, compliment the pictures on the wall, the trophies, whatever it is. Then all of a sudden, that always gets back to the realtor, which is ultimately the drone pilot's client. And then oftentimes we hear they're like, the realtor will say, I think my client, the person selling the house, likes you more than me, but it just edifies. It's third party
That's
edification,
exactly
and it
right.
just makes, and they want to work with you even more. And then, of
Yeah.
course, the third and biggest wow we get is when the house has been on the market for 6 weeks, all of a sudden has two offers 2 days after the aerial shots go up. And
Yeah.
like, holy crap, this really works. Wow. And that's and that's the big one. One thing I wanted to
Absolutely.
talk about, that another challenge is this industry is brand new. I mean, it's been around for a while, but it's just starting to get traction, and there's not many people know about it. And, nothing's been standardized in the industry, and the most competitive, I guess, market, that's there is real estate, but real estate is still, it's only 7 to 9% saturated,
Yeah.
and that's the most heavily saturated market or competitive market in kind of the drone space. So the most heavily saturated market is still 90% wide open. So one of the challenges is when you're going to talk to people about these services, they've never heard of it, they haven't done it before, or they don't know how it actually, you know, can benefit them. So you kind of get you're helping educating them on the buying process. And I think to your point, it takes longer because now you're just introducing it and planting that seed. And then that seed starts to, grow, and over time they move along the buying cycle a little bit more. But anything that you can speak to that could maybe help people?
Yeah, it's a good question. The closest I have in parallel, and again, I'm going to use the measurement brand we have, measureu.com for this. So we have when you're trying to talk to a company that thinks they have their measurement together because they've set it up like they know how to set it up. And what I mean by that is they did it like they were taught to do it in college, and like probably everybody else around them is. In our opinion, that's actually what the problem is and why it's causing all these problems, attribution, everything else that everybody deals with. But the point is, when you're talking to somebody who doesn't know they have a problem, you cannot convince them they do, right? Because you can't say, oh no, it can be a better. They go, it works already. Now they don't know it's not working, right? You look at the machine and it's smoking and sparks are flying out because you understand how the machine works. To them, the sparking machine with smoke flying out is how the machine was built. So for them, that's just how it operates. It's just one of those funny machines. You got to just kick it every once in a while to keep it running. And that's how everybody else around them is. So they don't know it's wrong, right? They think it's a solid thing. So what we would do, and what we do is we do a lot of before and after style things to show them what's possible. So instead of doing a training like, and again, I'll relate it to measurement, and then we can talk about how it might that same pattern might be associated with drone sales, or selling that service. But when you're as a measurement person, if I say, here's how to analyze a report, then it's gonna assume somebody's got a bunch of data tables and spreadsheet and everything else. So we're gonna do that. And there's a lot of people who are trying to solve that problem. Instead, what we do is we say, here's how to make a report that doesn't need analysis. Here's how to never analyze reports again. What a waste of time. Like, we literally have students come to us saying, I'm just trying to learn how to analyze reports. And I'm like, wow, well, the first thing you're going to do is learn how to make your reports simpler so they don't require analysis, And then it's like, what? Like, okay, that's different. That's something they haven't heard before. And it goes back to kind of the wows a little bit, but you need that then where they turn on a light bulb, they go, that's a new possibility I'd never considered. Because if drone, the footage that a drone can provide gives them a new possibility that they've never before considered, and you're the one delivering that possibility, you are literally bringing them a future that otherwise they would not have access to. That makes you a powerful person in their life, right? A powerful individual in their life. We do it all the time with education. It's why I like training so much, just as a space, right? Same thing I'm sure with you guys with Sky Eye. I know how passionate you are about taking care of the students, making sure people are successful with what they've got, right? But I think that's how I would approach that, is come up with a way where you're like, oh, I just want to show you an example of something we recently did with a listing that it looks like one of your competitors is doing, right? Or whatever. And it's like, oh, here's what the listing looked like. Here's it, days on market. Here's the ones we've done with drone footage, the average days on market. Here are the ones we did without drone footage, average days on market. Now you go, see a difference? And they go, well, okay, okay, that makes sense. I'm getting better qualified buyers because they've seen everything. I'm not getting looky loos. I'm not wasting my time on open houses anymore. I seem to be people that are coming are obviously educated. They've seen everything. Maybe this is why it sells faster. Maybe I should invest in this drone footage that can accelerate a sales timeline, bring me happier clients on both sides of the sale, when it comes to real estate. And then there's you're going back to the B2B thing. There's that concept of the industrial stuff that's out there. And again, obviously there need to be different licenses, and you all know that more than I do in terms of what's useful, but there's going to be a massive push into getting, where can we use a drone? Like right now, my company, the thing is like, how do we automate this? Right. I can very likely see over the next year, people having conversations. How do we use a drone for that? Because what's the point in seeing any human higher than 10 feet in the air ever again? Why? To see something, right? Obviously to do something. But even drones are getting better at doing stuff too. So, but at least just the footage of it alone is like, can we see the error without sending somebody on top of the roof? Probably. Why take the liability hit? One person falling off a roof versus drone. It seems like it's cheaper than insurance,
Yeah.
for a lot of this. And so there's a lot of different ways. And just planning that conversation where they go, oh, cheaper than insurance. I never considered that before. Okay, maybe not. Or, oh, I can see how I've got data that says if things with drone footage have this less many accidents or something like that. Any data you can get from your clientele, right? From before and after. Here's what things were like before we started using the drones. And then here's what life is like after. Use those as case studies, give those to other people, because that's what's going to help them go like, I didn't realize that was a thing. Because if you can, again, it goes back to that delivering vision to them, that future. If you can make them go, I've never considered that. That brings me a whole new set of resources. Doesn't mean that they're immediately going to be like, that's an awesome idea. Let's jump in 2 feet. But they go, that's new and different. And people want that. They want possibilities. They don't necessarily want somebody who's going to do the same thing over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. And I think that's one of the big appeals with drones and what we have, which is pretty pretty exciting.
Especially now before it gets, because I mean, you know this as much as I do. Measurement was the same way. It was like the Wild West. Nobody was regulating anything. And then you have, all these laws come in with privacy laws and consent laws and all this stuff that goes on with the world of digital measurement. Same thing's going to happen to drones. When's the best time to start the business? Yesterday. When's the second best time? Now, right? Like right now is the time because it is just starting out, that particular industry, just starting out. And especially when you look at what happened with Jersey and everybody seeing everything. I mean, literally, you've got politicians pointing out stars that they think are a drone. You know what I mean? Like it went from that all the way to actual drones, like, and everything in between was called a drone. That is absolutely got government officials going, we have to figure out how to do some things with this. And I think that's going to be a good thing for everybody because the right players are going to have it's going to keep the looky loos out of the market. You're going to have real businesses start to pop up. Real people are going to start considering it. But like, wow, there's a lot of people that are excited about. I didn't realize drones could be that big. That's what I was thinking. I was like, I didn't realize a drone could be that big. Could be used even with the conspiracy theory stuff. I didn't realize a drone could be used for that, but it makes total sense it would. And now I'm thinking about where else could I see drones or use drones? And that's everybody else is doing that too in the country, in the world. Let alone the country. So there's going to be I would definitely foresee a drone explosion coming up. Best guess, can't guarantee that, but that just my sort of subtle looking at the market and how it's evolving, just going to get big.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. And that's why
Look who I'm talking to. Of course. You're like, yeah, no, actually it's going to get smaller over time. No, this is definitely one of those growth industries for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. It's super cool. Could you back up and talk a little bit about measurement and what that, what are the metrics and stuff that you guys kind of look at, especially as it pertains to someone starting something new.
Great question. So when somebody's starting something new, and I do this for myself, my team members, students, clients, whoever, I try to focus. Yes, you want to deliver an end result, you want the end result if you're trying to get it yourself. I want this end result of whatever it is. But what I really focus on for myself, students, clients, everybody, it's the recipe. You have to follow recipe because if you get the result, but you didn't follow recipe to get the result, and it just kind of happened because you hustled your ass off, maybe, and that's fine. But man, that's not a pattern. That's not something you can teach to somebody else, right? That's not a really good recipe to use. And so if you're successful, but you don't know how you're successful, it's tough to replicate it. And then of course, if you fail, but you don't know how you failed because you weren't using a recipe, you weren't planning things out properly, then you're equally problematic because you don't know how you failed. So you're likely to fail again, right? This is why things with SkyEye, you guys provide so much blueprint on like, oh, here's a different business model. Here's everything you need for this business model. Follow that recipe. That's what I would suggest. You just dive in and follow the recipe. So when it comes to measuring things, and bringing it back to that measurement question, the way that I do that is anything that can be a number in the recipe is what I'm measuring for. So if we're talking about user journeys, right? Because we're all going to have websites and you're going to want to give your business cards out and tchotchkes, whatever else. And they might go to your site and sign up to maybe book a call or something like that. If that happens to be a business model or to sign up for your email list, if that happens to be your business model. But either way, you're going to want to know, is that working the way it should? Right. So the way we do it in measurement is we will measure for four different steps of a user journey. The first we call the ask, and we call this ACT just to be kind of keep it easy. But it's the first is the A stands for ask. How many people are we asking every time? Now, for some people watching this, maybe you don't have a website, but you are picking up the phone and dialing 10 times a day. Well, that's 10 asks a day, or you're knocking on doors. That's 10 asks a day, right? Whatever it is. It's how many times are you asking for a sale? Doesn't mean they're going to, doesn't mean they're going to talk to you. It just means you at least attempted it, right? Then there's a C. So the asks, number of asks. We then measure the number of considerations. How many people actually started taking that journey step a little bit? Doesn't mean they finished it, but it means at least they let me in the door, right? At least they started to have a conversation. So in the online world, an ask might be the offer page loads up, and then maybe they go to a cart page to purchase something. That's a consideration. Doesn't mean they bought it, just means they were definitely thinking about it, or else why would they be on the cart, right? Same thing if it's face-to-face. It's one is knocking on the doors, hey, is whoever the owner is around, and no, they're not. Okay, well, I tried. I asked, but they weren't there, versus the owner coming up and actually have a conversation with you, right? Or being able to set an appointment with somebody. That's a consideration behavior, a deeper level of engagement. Then, so we've got the asks, we've got considerations, and then finally the T is the transaction itself. So what's the sale? Who actually bought, right? And then for how much? That's the fourth number, so that we know our average ticket or average sales. And that's what guides digital marketing, because obviously you need to know how much money you're making to know how much money you want to spend on ads. If that is your business model for paid ads. Not that that's necessary in a lot. We didn't do it for years and years and years. We didn't do paid ads, and we're still wildly successful. Believe it or not, with things like this, doing podcasts, is kind of how we did it. But either way, even if I didn't have a website, I'd still be measuring how many asks. Like if I was just starting my drone company today, it would be how many asks am I going to do next week? I'm going to do 10 asks a day. Okay, so that means I got 50 asks that week. Let's say I get 20% of them are having some sort of conversation or communication back. Okay, fine, I'll get 20% of them is what I expect to do that. And then maybe I'm going to sell one sale, right, or one appointment or whatever it is, to keep the numbers easy. And then I'll measure for that. So that's my plan. In other words, that's the recipe, right? Think ask, consider, transact. And then that's the plan, the recipe. Then I use the plan, I use the recipe, and then I'm measuring it along the way to make sure that the thing that I think is a cake, the recipe's telling me it's supposed to be baking a cake, is it actually a cake, right? Or did it come out a steak, or something really weird and different? Because that's how you know if you're using the right recipe or not, or did the recipe change? And you always have to do that. So that would be my suggestion for keeping measurement as simple as possible, is measure the stages of that sales pipeline however you need to. If it's online, you can use tools like Google Analytics to do that. If it could be a post-it note, or a whiteboard or a piece of paper somewhere. If you're out knocking on doors or picking up the phone or just sending emails, you could do that same thing. So there's lots of ways to do it, but think act, right? So ask, consider, transact, and then of course for how much, and that gives you your revenue amounts.
I love that. That simplifies it so much. And I think the key action there is act. It's actually taking massive action, getting out there and actually doing it.
Yeah.
That's one of the keys.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
One thing, and the last thing I'd like some input on, or your opinion on, is we've got over 300 different vertical markets that people can dive into. So and any one of these things could easily be a multi-six, or even seven-figure revenue stream for them. And with so many different options, one thing we've done with Sky Network is we've broken it down to kind of the top 20, and then the top 5 low-hanging fruit, so people can go out there and actually pick one of these, and like you said, follow the plan. And ironically, the people that we seem to historically have the most success are military people.
Very structured. They follow a plan. They just need the plan to follow. Exactly. Yep.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
I think that's exactly why they get the results they do, is because they don't question it. They don't try and reinvent the wheel. They don't say, well, I'm going to change the script and do this. They just do what's there, and then they get the results, so that they have some pretty wild success. But one of the challenges also is with so many different things. It's like, oh, well, I try this a little bit, and then, oh, well, I'm going to go try this a little bit, or, oh, I'm going to go try this a little bit. I mean, and there's everything from doing inspections for cell towers to golf courses. We can fly over golf courses and tell where they're watering too much or not watering enough. Where they're over fertilizing, under fertilizing. We save the average golf course about $200,000 a year in wasted fertilizer, and about 50 million gallons a year of wasted water, just because they're not measuring it, right? They're just
because they didn't know they could with a drone. They didn't know how easy it was. They thought, I got to put in this complicated system that's going to be in the ground measure. That's what I would think if I didn't know about drones. That's exactly what I would think. Yep. I love that. That's a great idea.
Yep. So that, and from that to real estate, like we talked about, aerial funerals, spreading ashes and recording it and creating an amazing, memorable video and live streaming it. There's, and then like you mentioned, the 10 feet, doing inspections there. I think last year, there were over 300 fatalities, people doing power line inspection, cell tower inspection, wind farm inspection, offshore oil rigs, all these inspections and 82% of those fatalities could have been avoided because they were just doing a routine inspection. A drone could have done.
Just looking with what a camera could have picked up. Yeah.
And to your point, not changing anything, which, I agree. I think in a few years, the drones will be doing that as well. But for right now, and it's just crazy that, what the value that can be provided. But with all those different options, one thing that I believe is there's real power in just picking one, and just focusing on it. And I wanted to know your take on that.
So it's a funny story, because it is one of my, like, when I was a kid in my 20s, So way back when, there was a guy named Frank Carney who was speaking on stage, and he happened to own all of the Pizza Huts, like in the Northeast part of the U.S. and a big chunk of the regional area. And he had just bought a big gigantic thing of Papa John's, big franchise down south in Papa John's, and it was a big deal. He was literally doing commercials with Papa John, right? Talking about how the biggest franchisor of Pizza Hut just bought the biggest, just became the biggest Papa John. It was this very brief, weird period of time, but he was on stage, and it was funny because my first job was one of his Pizza Hut stores. So we had never met, but it was just kind of like, oh, this is cool. And I was thinking right then, I was, learning sales and personal development. So I was reading a lot of Tony Robbins. So I'm like, I'm going to jump up on stage and I'm going to interview this guy and I'm going to get all the life secrets and I'm going to be this, right? So I do. I jump up on stage. I get a meeting with him. He happened to have a office down in Houston. Didn't have a car. Figured out how to borrow a car and get my ass down to interview with him. And at the long and the short of it was, I asked him this question. I said, what's the one, if you had to crystallize everything in one word, like the one word, the thing you wish you had done earlier and sooner, what would it be? And he said, focus. And I took that advice and ignored it for about 30 years. But he's wrong. He's exactly right. He's exactly right. It wasn't wrong. He was exactly right. It's focus. The trick, I think, to focus is when there's so many opportunities, everything's an opportunity and everybody thinks, well, there's so much opportunity, and this is what I think the talk is. There's so much opportunity that I'm not sure what to do. But if there's so much opportunity, what's really happening in your head is you're going, there's so much opportunity. One of this is too good to be true. One of these is the better opportunity. The rest of them are lack, right? Or wrong. And I'm afraid of being wrong. So I'm not going to make a decision. And that's kind of what happens. But if you think about what you're saying, they're all opportunities. So they're all opportunities. You can't be wrong. You just need to choose. You just need to choose. And you have to have faith at a certain point. And I'm not necessarily in like the spiritual sort of God side of faith, but just have faith that because they're all opportunities and because this industry is such a good opportunity, that there's so much abundance in this industry, it's going to be really hard to mess it up. With the exception of one thing you can do, which is to stop. That's the only thing. You can quit. I think that's the only way out of entrepreneurship is you quit. I've done it. I know what it's like. I don't think I've done it. I paused it for 20 years because I clearly didn't quit. Just put it on hiatus. But I think that's important. You make that decision and you go like, this is a good opportunity. So are the other good opportunities. If there's a better opportunity out there for me, I know I'm going to naturally find it. And you just take action, and you take action from that mindset. Because if you take action from the mindset of, oh, I've got to be right. And a lot of this I learned when I was trading stocks, right? Just to kind of bring it to a different topic, but same lesson. When I was trading stocks, I used to think the idea was you got to make a bunch of money in the stock market, and that's why you trade. And it took me years and years and years and tens of thousands of lost dollars to realize you don't do that at all when it comes to the stock market. It's not about that. It's about being able to play the game again tomorrow. Because if you have a good enough system, you have a good enough recipe, you just need that recipe to play over and over and over and over and over again. And even if sometimes this recipe doesn't quite work out, it mostly works out. So you're going to have mostly good things. And that's just how patterns work, right? So we make that decision, we follow the recipe, we take advantage of everything that's there. And when it comes to stocks, if you have a recipe that, your edge is a little bit, just a tiny bit on your favor, the more times you trade, the better you're going to do. Equally true, I think, when it comes to business, even more so when it comes to business, because stock market's got a whole bunch of other stuff you got to learn that and I've been in the markets for 30 years and still don't know anything about them, right? The entrepreneurship business, you own all the rules. You own the house. You are the house, right? If I go to work in the stock markets, same patterns. I can still think abundantly, but I'm playing like I'm in the house. I'm in somebody else's house. I know that, right? Entrepreneurship, I own the house. So pick one of the models that relates to you, and the ones who, and that's how I would probably source if it were me. I would go through how many models you have? So you have total that you got
Oh,
different business models.
what is there? 16?
So the first thing I would do is take the ones that are definite no's. Definite no's. Be like, nope, don't like this just because I don't want to be in an industrial warehouse. And that's maybe not your jam. Cool. Just this out. No, 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 for various reasons. The things that are definite no's, I think, are easier to spot. You take them out, they're never going to be that thing for you. And if they are later, they can come back later. They're just not now. You just move on. Decision made. Then you go through your yeses. And at that point, you go, okay, what are the no's of this group? And if there really are no, you keep doing that until you get to the point where there's no obvious no. They're all good. Then you go, cool, pick one. That's it. That's the winner. You pick one and that's the winner. Then it goes back to bring it full circle what we talked about. It's the decision you make. You say, I'm going to make this work because you've literally, especially with a company like SkyEye, you've put the odds in your favor because you're not just going, ooh, I just found a YouTube channel and flying drones as a business. I'm now going to make up everything and try to figure it out off of, blog posts and internet research, right? Like, God help me, that's going to be tough. But when you've got something that's like, hey, I'm going to take this prepackaged thing that's been tested so many times it actually could be packaged. I'm just going to follow along. I know not everything's going to work as easily as it's going to work for somebody else, and that's okay because I have the support network I can reach out to and say, hey, this thing didn't quite work for me. What's another thing you can think I could do? Or in my particular style, how would you adjust it? And you go back to the support network and the community that Sky has got so that you can go back and learn. This is exactly how I started, right? Different market, but this is how I started, is having a community out there, having somebody sort of prepackaged product that said, here's some things that we've done that you can do, and then you can iterate it on your own. And I think the trick to anything you take as a training program to get the most from it, don't question it. To your point, I think, and I did this a little bit because I do have this tendency where I'm like, well, let me show you how to do this even better. And I try to do that sometimes before I really understand how the thing works. So it's really hard to make it better if you don't understand how it works entirely. So you take the base, you just go through the motions over and over again, right? Just follow the plan and I used to tell my salespeople this. I'm like, you're going to do a script. Here's a script when we're training. You just need to say it 100 times. I don't care at all if you sell. Now, between me and you, I totally cared if they sold. But I didn't want them focusing on making sales. I needed them just saying the script over and over again. I said, if you accidentally sell something in your first 100 times, we'll definitely give you the credit for that. But that's not what the game is. The game is just say this thing 100 times, get used to the words. And of course they would sell, right? Because they're just practicing. It's the same thing when you start off a business. Go through the training, go through the patterns, work the magic, follow the scripts, do it exactly like people say to do it. Just learn the motion first. It's the baby steps. You've got to learn that basic beginner motion. Like when you go to a gym, you don't just start using the machines. You got to learn how to use the machines first with very light weights and how they work. Then you can start putting higher weight on it, right? Then you start customizing the experience to get a better result from it for your own personal standpoint. But at that point, you know how the machine works. So once you've got it narrowed down, you have the more obvious no's, pick one. That's the one you're going to make work. Ask for help whenever you need it. Follow the plan exactly as it goes according to plan. And just be very open in communication, knowing, you want to temper your expectations. Not everything's going to work perfectly. It never does. It's not supposed to. Things are going to work slightly differently for you than they would for me, even if you and I are following both the same training program, because we have different life experiences and skills that we're bringing to the table. But both of us can be successful, wildly successful, by using the support system that would be behind us, which in this case, in this example, would be SkyEye. So that would be my sort of advice of narrowing it down, jumping in, and then making sure that you just like it's your new religion, you use the support that you purchase with a program like SkyEye, because that's what's going to help you level things up a whole lot faster and help you to customize things and build your network.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mercer. Thanks for coming by and sharing all your wisdom and your knowledge with us. I always love hanging out with you, man. Learned so much. I took a bunch of notes over here, so I
Love it.
appreciate it. Any final words you want to share with everyone?
Just it goes back to when we first were talking about it, like how you get started and think about all this stuff. Like I'm a big fan of like you just make the decision to go, and at a certain point you just have faith, like it's going to work out. You're going to figure it out. You may not be in the way you think it is. The recipe you start with may probably is not going to be the recipe you finish with. But as long as you've decided that you're a cook and that you use recipes, that's half the battle right there. So just get started, commit to it, use your support network, and just keep cracking at it. Because being an entrepreneur, there is truly nothing better. It's incredibly difficult in a lot of ways, and it's incredibly rewarding in a lot of ways. And it's just one of those things that I wish for everybody to be able to experience and be successful with.
Awesome. I agree totally. I totally agree. Entrepreneurship is the biggest blessing that's been in my life. So awesome. Again, thank you so much, Mercer, and we'll see you on the flip side. All right.
Thanks, Damon. Appreciate you having me.